Greetings viewers and welcome to another Mathinator video. This time I will be doing SAT practice test number 7, section 3, math with no calculator. So you can go on to collegeboard.org and download and print out your own blank copy of this test. That way you can work the problems out along with me. Because of course one of the keys to success on the SAT is to practice, 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 and practice some more. But not just practice, practice doing the problems correctly to really build up and sharpen your math skills so that you will enter that test with an arsenal of a wide range of math knowledge for your success. You, of course, will be tested on a wide range of math topics, so the more you practice and the more you sharpen your skills, you will be able to recall what you need to know when it comes to working the problems out on the test. And of course, the other key to success I like to tell people is make sure you read every question carefully. And that applies for any test. But make sure you read every question slowly, carefully, and thoroughly. Make sure you understand the givens in the problem, especially when it's like a word problem. Make sure you understand exactly what it's asking you to do. Make sure you understand how you know you have gotten the correct answer. So of course what I will be doing, I will read each question one time, and then as I go about solving these problems, I want to not just solve them, but talk a little bit about the concept that is involved in solving it, because of course you're not going to have the same problems, but you will be tested on the same concepts. So I give a little bit of explanations and some test-taking tips and advice here and there. All right, that's enough talking introduction. Let's go ahead and get into it. X plus y equals 75. The equation above relates the number of minutes x Maria spends running each day and the number of minutes y she spends biking each day. In the equation, what does the number 75 represent? So this one is all about interpreting what is given in the wording and then relating it to the algebraic expression. The number of minutes spent running each day. Well, it says the number of minutes spent running is our x, and actually we can go ahead and write that out. Since x is run and y is bike, we're saying run plus bike equals 75. So we know it can't be the number of minutes spent biking. Well, the number of minutes spent biking is just y. The total number of minutes spent running and biking each day, well, that looks exactly what we have written down here. So yes, it's answer choice C. And then if we read D, the number of minutes spent biking for each minute spent running, nah, that doesn't make any sense based on what we have in our equation. So when we have word problems like this, along with making sure you read the question carefully, make sure you read each answer choice carefully. Which of the following is equivalent to 3 times the quantity x plus 5 minus 6? Well, what we're going to have to do here is use our distributive property. All right, so we want to equate our answer choices. So our distributive property is going to give us 3x plus 15 minus 6, and then when we simplify that, that gives us 3x plus 9, which we can see is answer choice C. All right, x equals y minus 3, x over 2 plus 2y equals 6. Which ordered pair, x, y, satisfies the system of equations shown above? All right, now one of the things, when we have a system of equations, one of the things we want to look for is a variable with no coefficient, and we have this right here, x is equal to y minus 3. So we can substitute that into our other equation and have one equation with one unknown. So I want to just go ahead and say we have y minus 3 divided by 2 plus 2y equals 6. And this is going to solve for y. And as we look at our answer choices, the y value is different in each one of those. So once we solve for the y, we won't have to solve for x after that. Let's go ahead. We need to clear that fraction, so go ahead and multiply everything through by 2. So we have y minus 3 plus 4y equals 12. Yes, remember we've got to multiply everything by that 2. And that's going to give us, when we combine our like terms, 5y equals 15. So now we know y equals 3, and it's going to be answer choice B. Which of the following complex numbers is equal to 5 plus 12i minus 9i squared minus 6i for I equals square root of negative 1? Now, when we talk about our complex numbers, we're talking about the form a plus or minus bi, where a is our real portion and bi is our imaginary portion. And we want to combine like terms. And I've seen a few problems like this on the SAT, but on this one they throw a little wrinkle at you, saying we have 9i squared minus 6i. Just a minor wrinkle, so let's go ahead and iron that out. That means we're saying 9 times I squared. Well, from our given, we have I equals the square root of -1, which means I squared equals -1. And that's also a given that you might have come across in like Algebra 2. So what we're looking at here is 5 plus 12i minus -9 minus 6i. So what I want to do is rewrite, all right, 5 plus 12i, and I want to distribute a -1 across the second complex expression there, so that we have 5 plus 12i, and then 9 plus 6i. 5 plus 9 is 14, so that tells us the answer D. Go ahead, finish it out. 14 plus 8i. If f of x equals x squared minus 6x plus 3 divided by x minus 1, what is f of -1? So this is just straight up function notation, understanding functions. So we know this number in the parentheses, we're going to put it in place of x in our function. So f of -1 equals -1 squared minus 6 times -1 plus 3 divided by -1 minus 1. So that is going to equal 1 plus 6 plus 3 divided by -2. And so right there we can get rid of our two positive choices, because we're going to end up with a positive divided by a negative. So the answer is going to be negative, and we have 10 divided by -2, which equals -5. A company that makes wildlife videos purchases camera equipment for $32,400. The equipment depreciates in value at a constant rate for 12 years, after which it is considered to have no monetary value. How much is the camera equipment worth 4 years after it is purchased? We have a classic word problem here. We got to take all this wording, put it into an algebra equation. What is it asking us? How much is the camera equipment worth 4 years after it is purchased? What are we given? Well, it depreciates in value at a constant rate, so that's linear. Our rate of change is a slope, it's linear. So we're looking at something of the form y equals mx plus b, where y is the worth. All right, we'll say that y is what it's worth. It depreciates in value, so that our slope is going to be negative. And now let's look at the fact that it's $32,400. So it starts off, they purchase it for $32,400, and we know that after 12 years it's going to be worth nothing, have no monetary value. So our known is 0 equals our depreciation rate, which we don't know, but we do know our time elapsed is 12 years, and the purchase price was $32,400. And that gives us 12m equals negative 32,400. So that m equals negative 2,700. So the depreciation, it depreciates $2,700 every year. So now 4 years after it is purchased, we want to know what is our worth y equals our m that we now know is negative 2,700, and x is 4 years plus 32,400. And that comes out to $21,600 is what it's worth 4 years after it is purchased. All right. Which of the following is equivalent to the expression above, x squared plus 6x plus 4? All right. We have to understand binomial expansion, because each of our answer choices has x plus 3 squared. So now what I talk about in some of my other videos is math eyes, being able to look at something and be able to interpret it mathematically very quickly, just in a blink of an eye. And as I look at that x squared plus 6x and my answer choices, I know it can't be C or D, because I know in my binomial expansion, and this comes up in every SAT practice test I've seen, if we got a plus b squared, it's going to equal a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And so that plus 2ab tells me that the a plus b, it has to be an a plus b. It can't be an a minus b. So now let's go ahead and do our binomial expansion on x plus 3. So that's going to be x squared plus 6x plus 9. We're looking for x squared plus 6x plus 4. So we need our constant portion to equal 4. And we can go ahead and say equivalent means equals, of course, x squared plus 6x plus 4, meaning we got to subtract that 4 from each side. So when we subtract that 4 from the 9, well, the only reasonable choice is going to be -5. So we've got, let's do it this way. That part right there is our x plus 3 squared. So x plus 3 squared minus the 5 equals x squared plus 6x plus 4. Ken is working this summer as part of a crew on a farm. He earned $8 per hour for the first 10 hours he worked this week. Because of his performance, his crew leader raised his salary to $10 per hour for the rest of the week. Ken saves 90% of his earnings from each week. What is the least number of hours he must work the rest of the week to save at least $270 for the week? All right, a lot going on here as far as the wording and the numbers being thrown at us. So we're looking for what is the least number of hours. All right, least number of hours, and he wants to save at least 270. Now let's start to put everything together, because this is kind of compound here. All right, he earned $8 per hour for the first 10 hours, and then he started earning $10 per hour. So let's go ahead and say at $8 per hour times 10, so he earned $80. And then the rest of the week he earned $10 per hour. He saves 90% of his earnings from each week. So of that $80, he saves well, let's just write $72. Keep track of what we're doing here. So he saved $72. Now, so now we're trying to find what is the least number of hours he must work the rest of the week to save at least $270 for the week. All right, so from the $8 per hour, he's already saved $72. So let's go ahead and say we got 270 minus 72. So he needs to get 198. That is how much he has to save for the rest of the week. Now let's interpret that in our problem. So he's earning $10 per hour. So $10 per hour times X number of hours. And he's saving 90% of that. So he wants 90% of that to be greater than or equal to 198. All right, so we keep track and see where that comes from. He's already put away, he wants to save at least 270 for the week. He's already saved 72. So now for the rest of the week he needs to save 198. So 198 needs to be 90% of 10 times x. That gives us 9x greater than or equal to 198. And so the least he can work is 22 hours. Marissa needs to hire at least 10 staff members for an upcoming project. The staff members will be made up of junior directors who will be paid $640 per week and senior directors who will be paid $880 per week. Her budget for paying the staff members is no more than $9,700 per week. She must hire at least 3 junior directors and at least 1 senior director. Which of the following systems of inequalities represents the conditions described if X is the number of junior directors and Y is the number of senior directors? Okay, Another one with a lot of wording and a lot of numbers, but let's go ahead and get into this. Now, translation is very important here, and I want to start with no more than $9,700 per week. No more than means less than or equal to. So we're looking for less than or equal to 9,700. That rules out C and A. Next, she must hire at least 3 junior directors. And let's see, junior directors is X. So at least is greater than or equal to. X has to be greater than or equal to 3. And there we see that rules out D. Our answer has to be B. And there are other pathways we could have approached this. Also, if we were to look at, all right, she has to hire at least 1 senior director, so that Y has to be greater than or equal to 1. And we see that rules out certain answer choices. So we're looking at combinations of what has to be. I just chose to start off with no more than 9,700 and then go to at least 3 junior directors. We could have gone to at least 10 staff members, and to say that X plus Y has to be greater than or equal to 10 and eliminate incorrect answer choices that way. So as with a lot of these problems here, there could be more than one pathway to the answer. I'm just showing one way that comes to me, pops into my head first. All right, ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d equals 0. In the equation above, a, b, c, and d are constants. If the equation has roots -1, -3, and 5, which of the following is a factor of ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d? Okay, sounds kind of complex maybe, but this is based on your knowledge of the graphs of polynomials. This polynomial has a degree of 3, as shown by the largest exponent, which means at most it can have 3 x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are the roots, -1, -3, and 5, so those are all of the x-intercepts of this equation. And then understanding whatever our x-intercepts are, the factors for that polynomial are going to be the value of the x-intercept with the negative sign put into a binomial. That sounded kind of off, weird, or whatever, but what that means is, so we have a root of -1, so we're going to change that sign to a +1 and put it with x in a binomial. And we'll do the same thing with that 3. We have -3, so that's going to be x plus 3. Well, we already have our answer is B, x plus 1. But just for the sake of it, that means for that 5, the factor would be x minus 5. And that gives us our polynomial in factored form. The expression x to the -2, y to the 1/2 divided by x to the 1/3, y to the -1, where x is greater than 1 and y greater than 1, is equivalent to which of the following? So we're looking at with this one is simplifying with our rules of exponents. And our rules of exponents tell us if we have a negative exponent, we move it to the other side of the fraction bar and it becomes positive. So that means on here that -2, that x to the -2 moves down, becomes x squared. X to the 1/3 stays where it is because that 1/3 is already positive. And in our numerator, y to the -1 comes up, and we have y to the 1/2 stays where it is. Now, looking at what we have in our answer choices, we have to understand also with our exponents, a rational exponent, we need to know how to interpret that. So if we have y to the 1/2, that equals the square root of y. The numerator, or the denominator in our rational exponent is the index on the radical, and the numerator is the exponent on the radicand. All right, so that means we have y times the square root of y divided by x squared, and that x to the 1/3, that 3 becomes the index, and that 1 is the exponent, and that is equivalent to answer choice D. The function f is defined by f of x equals x plus 3 times x plus 1. The graph of f in the xy plane is a parabola. Which of the following intervals contains the x-coordinate of the vertex of the graph of f? This one is all about our knowledge of parabolas. Okay. Now this pulls on the same concept as we had in number 10. All right. So since in factored form it's x plus 3, x plus 1, that means the x-intercepts are going to be -3 and -1. So we can go ahead and draw a parabola in there with its x-intercepts at -3 and -1. So that tells us our vertex has to be between -3 and -1 along the x-axis. And when we look at the intervals that we are given, it's in that interval -3 to 1. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x squared minus 2x minus 5 divided by x minus 3? All right, so what we've got going on here is polynomial division. So our polynomial division, we got x minus 3 into x squared minus 2x minus 5. All right, so let's talk a little bit about polynomial division. We're going to take the first term in our dividend, x squared, divided by the first term in our divisor, x. X squared divided by x equals x. And we're going to put that quotient above the term with the same variable. So we're going to put that above our 2x. And then we're going to multiply x times x minus 3. So we have x squared minus 3x. And then just like our long division with numbers, all right, that's all we're doing, same algorithm. We're going to subtract. And now x squared minus x squared, that sums to 0. Be careful here. We've got -2x minus -3x. So -2x plus 3x equals x minus 5. Looks like answer choices A and B. But we're not done yet. We have to keep going. Next thing we're going to do is take this first term and we're going to divide it by the first term in our divisor. X divided by x equals 1. And we're going to put that above our constant. And it's positive. So we have a plus 1. Now we can go ahead and rule out A and B. We're going to multiply again so that we have x minus 3. We're going to subtract again. Those sum to 0. -5 minus -3 is a -2. And that rules out C. Our answer choice has to be D, or the correct answer has to be D. And for our full answer, to complete this out, we would just take our divisor and put it underneath this leftover part right here for our remainder. All right. A shipping service restricts the dimensions of the boxes it will ship for a certain type of service. The restriction states that for boxes shaped like rectangular prisms, the sum of the perimeter of the base of the box and the height of the box cannot exceed 130 inches. The perimeter of the base is determined using the width and length of the box. If a box has a height of 60 inches and its length is 2.5 times the width, which inequality shows the allowable width x in inches of the box? Another one that's real wordy. All right, so let's go ahead, break this down, and get our answer. The first thing we're going to do is ask number 15 if we can borrow some space from over there. Hey, number 15, can we borrow some of your space? All right, cool. All right, so let's look at our rectangular prism. Let's go ahead and draw a rectangular prism here. Go with our givens. We're given a rectangular prism that has a height of 60 inches. So here's our height. There's our 60 inches. And now our base has a perimeter, L, and a width, X. Now, what are we saying here? What are we dealing with? The perimeter plus the height has to be less than or equal to 130 inches. It cannot exceed 130, so that is a less than or equal to. We already know that the height is 60, so the perimeter plus 60 has to be less than or equal to 130. So the perimeter has to be less than or equal to 70 inches. Now let's go look at our perimeter. Our perimeter is equal to 2L plus 2W. In this case, we'll say 2X, since it said our width is X. So 2L plus 2X. But we're also given that the length L is 2.5 times the width X. And we're trying to solve for X, so now we can use this expression right here and substitute and say that our perimeter 2 times 2.5x plus 2x has to be less than or equal to 70. All right, so that is 5x plus 2x less than or equal to 70. So 7x less than or equal to 70, so that our width x has to be less than or equal to 10. Between 0 and 10, answer choice A. All right, that was a fun little problem there. Okay, the expression 1/3 x squared minus 2 can be rewritten as 1/3 x minus k x plus k, where k is a positive constant. What is the value of k? Now let's see what's going on with this one. Math eyes. We got to be able to look at certain situations and figure out what's going on. Now, when I look at this right here, that tells me something, but I won't get into that just yet. Now, normally when we factor out something, we're told to factor out a GCF that factors out. Well, of course, if it's a factor, then it's going to be a whole number. All right. If we factor out something, that means we multiply the two whole numbers to get a whole number, or two integers to get an integer. But now we're factoring out a 1/3. That's kind of weird. So let's look what happens when we factor out a 1/3. If we factor out a 1/3, that gives us x squared minus, and now we've got 2 divided by 1/3. And 2 divided by 1/3 is 6. Now, as far as that x minus k, x plus k, I know, to me, my math eyes look at that and see, well, that's the factored form of a difference of 2 squares. But the thing is, we're usually taught when it comes to difference of 2 squares, it has to be the difference of 2 perfect squares. Well, newsflash, every number is a perfect square, technically, because 6 is equal to the square root of 6 squared. So even though it's not a perfect square like the 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, like that, it is still a perfect square because it has a square root. Of course, its square root is an irrational number. All right, so now that we know we've got a difference of 2 squares, and we know that the square root of 6 is the square root of 6, we got 1/3 x minus the square root of 6, x plus the square root of 6. So that k is the square root of 6. Answer choice D. And that ends our multiple choice portion. On to our free response. If 2x plus 8 equals 16, what is the value of x plus 4? All right, math eyes. I look at this, I see 2x plus 8, I see x plus 4, and I notice that 2x plus 8 is exactly twice as much as x plus 4. So since 2x plus 8 that is equal to twice as much as x plus 4. So since 2x plus 8 equals 16, that means 16 is also going to equal twice as much as x plus 4, meaning x plus 4 equals 8. Okay. All right, let's look at this figure. In the figure above, line segment MQ and line segment NR intersect at point P. NP equals QP. All right, let's go ahead and say NP equals QP. That's what we're given. And MP equals PR. So MP equals PR. What is the measure in degrees of angle QMR? So we want to know what is the measure of that angle right there. So we've got some good geometry going on here. We've got a straight angle at P. That is a straight angle, which means the sum of these two angles right here has to be 180. They're supplementary. That means that has to be 120 degrees, that angle right there. Now, the next thing we've got going on is the fact that we have an isosceles triangle. All right, of course, you know isosceles because these two sides are equal. So we have an isosceles triangle. Now, the thing with isosceles triangles is that it's the opposite angles are also congruent. So since those two sides are congruent, these two angles are congruent. So now, two things we can see here. Because we have a triangle, and that's 120 degrees, and the total triangle has to be 180, and let's just call that x right there. We know that 2x has to equal 60. But also, we didn't even need to get this 120 degrees right here. We could have just gone to the fact that because we have an isosceles triangle, all right, MPR is an isosceles triangle, because we know that, and that tells us that these two angles have to be congruent here. Our exterior angle theorem tells us that this angle right here equals the sum of those two angles. So it still comes down to 2x equals 60, meaning x equals 30 degrees. The number of radians in a 720 degree angle can be written as a pi, where a is a constant. What is the value of a? All right, so we've got some good old trigonometry right here. I think the easiest way to do this, well, I'll just go ahead and draw a circle, just because. Now, if we show trigonometry, the angles start right there. If we go all the way around the circle, 360 degrees is 2 pi. 720 degrees is twice around the circle. So 720 degrees is going to be 2 times that. So 720 degrees is going to be equal to 4 pi, which means a equals 4.